Labia Minoras. What you should know before getting them done, coming up next on Consultations by a Piercer, episode number 51. For those who are new to the channel, welcome to the channel. Welcome to the Body Piercing and Tattooing channel. Hope you're enjoying the videos. Hope you're finding it helpful and useful, but you may not know who I am. My name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I own and operate the Axiom Body Piercing Studio. Look at it right here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside the fabulous Skin Kitchen Tattoo. I always like to start these off with a disclaimer. First and foremost, I'm going to be talking about a genital piercing. If you are not comfortable with that subject, or are offended by it, or what have you, or you're not of a proper age where you live, or it's something that you're not supposed to be know about, I don't know. Pick another video. We have plenty of other ones that have nothing to do with genital piercings. If you're here looking for something tantalizing and exciting, you're going to be sadly disappointed. This video is solely for educational purposes. For those that are considering the video, or considering the piercing, not the video, considering this piercing, or maybe they're partners, or maybe they're just curious. With that out of the way, what are we talking about today? We are talking about a labia minora piercing. Also, often people will refer to it the inner labia or the inner lips of the vulva. This can be pierced pretty much anywhere on there, usually done with rings, but done high and in pairs that are kind of a little offset. We'll get into all that stuff and etc. But first off, let's start out with the basics. Average healing time on these is going to be anywhere from roughly about 6 to 8 weeks, but I suggest that you treat it like a healing piercing for 3 months, during which time I'm going to suggest that you clean it twice daily using a sterile saline solution. My personal suggestion is Neomed's Piercing Aftercare. It is what we sell here in the studio, and it's what I've used on my own piercings and what I suggest. The main reason is it comes out in a fine mist, which makes it very easy to use on a healing piercing. You basically just mist both sides of it, let it stay in contact, and that's all you really need to do. That twice daily, and the shower part I'm going to get to. If in your part of the universe you cannot find the Piercing Aftercare stuff, and maybe you've ended up with another type of saline or what have you, there are other options. Main things you want to look for is it in a metal can? And if it isn't, that's not what you want. It should also say sterile on it. When you turn it over and look at ingredients, there should be nothing in there other than some form of purified water and sodium chloride. Nothing else. If it has any additives, preservatives, etc., that's not what you want. Move along and find something else. If that can delivers like a squirt gun, or it's really powerful, spraying it directly on the piercing is probably not going to feel very good, and it's going to be kind of wasteful. Well, what I generally suggest is to do compresses. Best option, take a sterile piece of gauze sponge, saturate it, lay it against the area for roughly about 5 minutes. You can also use a folded up paper towel, a clean one. It'll work at a pinch. So, saline twice daily. The other thing I suggest doing is the end of your shower, kind of stick your pelvis out and let the water flow over the area for about 30 seconds. What we're doing with these two things is removing that discharge that hardens, collects on the jewelry. The reason why I want it off there, especially with these piercings, because they're usually done with circular jewelry, is a lot of movement, and it can agitate it when it's like those things are like little speed bumps. They don't feel good either. In fact, it kind of feels like pulling off a scab. So we'd rather melt them away than pull them away. Does that make sense? Now it's time to start moving into them don'ts. Cross-contamination prevention. Common sense stuff. Wash your hands before you handle it. No oral contact or exchange of bodily fluids on, near, or around the piercing until for a minimum of 6 months. That does not mean that you can't have sex for 6 months. It just means you need to use some type of latex barrier. And we'll get into a little bit more of that here in a second. Keep your environment clean. The clothing, the bedding, the towels, anything that may come in contact with the piercing needs to be cleaned on a regular basis. Do not swim. I know you're going to get conflicting views from all over the internet and accounts of I swam in sewage and didn't get an infection. It took 6 years for it to heal, but it didn't. I don't think it was the swimming in the sewage part. Here's how it works. Any body of water that's large enough for you to submerge your whole body in and move around is probably full, I can guarantee is full of microorganisms. Those microorganisms can work their way into an open wound, which is what a piercing is during the healing process. Then you have a thing called an infection. Get it? So no swimming. This one usually makes people look at me odd. Keep pets away from it. Don't let them sleep in the bed. Mainly, I'm more concerned about their access to your bedding. Just kind of, it's the forbidden pet zone until the piercing's completely healed. You don't really want to know what lives on your fabulous, lovely, loving pet's fur. No. And what they transfer into your bed when you cuddle with them. Ugh. Anyway. Trauma, clothing, and abuse. We're going to talk about fashion. Avoid clothing that's constrictive or abrasive. Super tight clothing, especially right after they're done, where it's going to put a lot of pressure or twist the jewelry, isn't your best option. Loose fitting is usually your best option. Do not sleep directly on the piercings. Do not do that. Do not purposely spin, rotate, or move the jewelry. There's absolutely no reason to do that, and it's only going to lead to problems. Do not play with the piercings. They are not a fidget spinner. They are not to be messed with. In fact, completely avoid contact with the piercing whenever possible until it's completely healed. Okay, let's move on to risks. First one, you are more susceptible to STDs or STIs even after the piercing is healed, so you need to practice safe sex whenever switching partners. It's the thinness of the scar tissue and the activity that's usually involved in that area and the possibility of creating a slight tear, and they have an exchange and then infection and, stuff you don't want. The other thing is rejection or migration. It's not really a huge thing with these, but they can migrate a little bit. The tissue is kind of soft. Over time, they can do that. If they're caught just right, they can tear. But, yeah, usually not a huge risk, but it's one that is possible. This one is common in labia piercings and other genital piercings for that matter. A kind of thinning of the tissue caused by the weight of the jewelry. This is why I really suggest wearing lightweight titanium jewelry opposed to heavy stainless steel or niobium or things that are really oversized for no apparent reason, because the chances are is it can thin out that tissue, and the thinner it is, the less resistance, the more likelihood of problems. Kind of like earlobes. Anybody that stretched their ears knows that over time, that area the above, especially if you wear heavy jewelry, starts thinning out. And this can happen pretty regularly with labia minora piercings and sometimes majora piercings too. So, light jewelry, not huge things, unless that's what you're going for. And, of course, with any piercing, if you remove the jewelry for an extended period of time, your body will close the piercing. Sex. One of everybody's favorite subjects. We're human. Gentle at first. If it hurts to do something, try something else or take a break until it doesn't hurt anymore. As I mentioned earlier, latex barrier for a minimum of 6 months. I don't care if you've been with a person for 30 years. We're not worried about the normal things we usually worry about when it comes to suggesting latex barriers. What we're worried about is an exchange of bacteria in an open wound. That will go down over time, and usually kind of about 6 months into the healing process, you're pretty good. Water-based lubricant only, nothing else. Also, don't get anything that's got any warming agents, gels, spermicide, anything that's flavored. Any of that stuff is going to probably get into the piercing and cause issues. You just want plain. Common question is toys and other enjoyment activity type things. Approach it the same way you would approach sex. Gentle at first. If it hurts to do something else. As far as your toys, make sure that they are clean and disinfected on a regular basis. And it's not a bad idea to just put a condom on them while you're going through this healing process, just to be on the safe side. Especially, you should, and just as an added hint, If you ever share them with other people, you need to either throw that away or put a condom on it. Now let's talk about placement, anatomy, and angle. These are basically generally done just through the labia minora. As far as whether or not you have the anatomy for it, you need to have enough room there for that jewelry to sit comfortably inside there and not be right on the edge. They need to be wide enough, in essence. There also needs to be enough room higher up on the vulva. We usually pierce them higher up, mainly to avoid them interfering with penetration. If they're further down, they can be kind of uncomfortable and kind of get in the way. So we want them a little bit higher up above that. There also needs to be room there for the jewelry to sit comfortably. In this case, deep valleys are going to be a little less, not really the best option for this piercing. And for those who don't remember or haven't heard one of these videos or haven't seen one of my videos before, when it comes to vulvas, there's kind of two extremes. There's the hill where a majority of the genitalia is exposed and outside the body. And then there's the valleys where it's almost completely enclosed and sealed up by the labia minoras or majoras. The ones that, in this case, that are deeper in, that are more of that valley, having that jewelry in there, there may not be enough room, and it might twist back and forth and be kind of uncomfortable. The other thing is we usually put these kind of offset so that they don't bang against each other. And the reasoning behind this is it can be kind of uncomfortable, but also we don't want one piece of jewelry damaging the other piece of jewelry, which could lead to some issues. So if they don't look like they perfectly match and symmetrical, that's on purpose and by design. We want them to be offset. Now let's talk a little bit about jewelry. This traditionally is done with cat bead rings or circular barbells. They can be done with curved or straight barbells. Personally, I think just for the look and aesthetics and from what I've talked to clients and what they enjoy about the piercing is basically the movement of the rings and the pulling on the rings. In that case, rings are going to be a much better option. Like I said, titanium. If you're going to go with barbells of any type, make sure they're internally threaded. Don't get any externally threaded, especially down there. It's not going to feel good when you change them. As far as the diameter or gauge, usually these are done at 12 gauge or larger. Diameter-wise, we usually go a little smaller on these, depending on how deep we're going into the labia. Usually half inch is a pretty common size. If we end up doing this with a curved barbell or straight barbell, usually we can go all the way down to 3/8 or 5/16, depending on the person. It really does. I have done these with 14 gauge in the past, and they are fine, held fine, everything else. But I found that 12 gauge, because it has is a little bit thicker, feels more comfortable when it's pulled on. And that's one of the reasons why people a lot of times will stretch these. These also are kind of like the Prince Albert piercing on men, or male genitals or penises, whatever you want to define it as now. And the fact that they kind of stretch on their own. Let's talk about the piercing experience. Pain-wise, I've heard everything from, on a scale of 1 to 10, this was a 2, meaning it barely felt any worse than a navel piercing, to up to about a 6. It varies from person to person. Everybody has kind of a little bit different experience. The thing about genital piercings, though, is it's kind of an, oh, yeah, that hurts, and then it's over immediately. Unlike other piercings where you have the throbbing and aching immediately afterwards, or heat and everything else, with genital piercings, it's kind of an, oh, God, that hurts, and then it's over. A breathing exercise will always help with a piercing, especially one that you're extremely nervous about. Most common is smell the cake through your nose and blow out the candles through your mouth. And usually this is led by the piercer, and they will do it to kind of get you a little bit off guard, I guess is a good way to do it, and just do the piercing and have it over with before you can even react. This could be done freehand. I personally don't like that idea. I do them with forceps. What we'll do initially is disinfect the area, mark it, talk to you about whether or not that's a placement that's going to work for you. And I usually try to get people's input on where they want it. Then we will lay you back, put a set of Pennington forceps on there, inject the needle in and through while doing the breathing exercise I was talking about later. Remove the forceps. Depending on the type of jewelry, if we're using something threaded, we'll use a guide pin, attach the jewelry to put the jewelry in. If it is just a plain good old-fashioned catty bead ring, we put it against the back end of the needle, and we slowly insert it into the piercing. Then we close the jewelry, stop any bleeding that occurs, and these usually don't really bleed a lot. Occasionally they do, sometimes they don't. Varies from person to person. And then we're done. Now, it's not uncommon to have some tenderness of the touch. Certain movements, walking a certain way or wearing a certain type of clothing does not feel good. You kind of have a couple days there where you need to kind of experiment with that and see how things go. Loose-fitting clothing is best. If you can sit around in sweats for a couple days, that would be even better. Now let's talk about what you should consider. The first one, you can't sleep on this piercing, so plan ahead for that one. If you're a stomach sleeper, start training yourself not to be one before you get it pierced. I really suggest that you talk to your partner about this beforehand. Basically, they do need to have a little bit of input. Bottom line is, it's your body, your decision, but this is going to affect them, especially with somebody that you live with and you are intimate on a regular basis, because you're not going to feel up to it as much as you think you're going to, or it's going to constantly be on your mind because you have a new genital piercing. It's kind of either or. That's been my experience. It's a good idea to sit down and talk to them and figure out what their feelings are on it. Are they okay with kind of having a break from that for a little while? Also, do you want to plan a romantic thing beforehand and spend a lot of time and kind of get all that energy out of the two of you before you get it done? Good ideas all around. One thing I do not suggest doing is getting this done because you have a romantic event coming up. It's an anniversary or somebody's birthday or somebody's coming back from deployment or Valentine's Day. You are kind of creating a situation where, yes, they're going to be excited by the piercing, but they're going to be unable to do anything about it because they can't handle it. They can't have interaction with it until it's healed. So if you do have something like that going on and you can figure it out, I would suggest doing it long before, so by the time they do get to see it, it's healed. But, in most cases, people don't have 3 to 6 months. So, yeah, that's where that's at. Otherwise, wait until afterwards. If you're giving it to your partner as a gift, get them a gift card. Don't just, hey, it's Valentine's Day, let's go get pierced. Not a good idea unless it's an area of the body that's not going to interrupt what is supposed to be what happens at the end of the night. Loose-fitting clothing is best when you're coming in to get pierced. I love it when people come in something they can just lift up instead of having to deal with taking off trousers and everything else. It's up to you. Afterwards, sweats are going to feel great. You kind of want to avoid anything that's really tight in that area or is very rigid in that area. If you have a couple days off, like let's say you're getting pierced, you want to get pierced, and you have like a 3-day weekend, it's not a bad idea to get pierced on Friday right after work, so then you have 3 days to just kind of recover and not have to deal with anything. You cannot swim. Plan that ahead of time. If you have anything in your calendar in the future that's going to demand that you swim or you may be swimming at, you need to postpone or just not do this. I'm telling you, if you don't want an infection, don't swim. Now, the other thing is if you have a vacation or road trip or a business trip or something coming up immediately, it's best to wait until afterwards. And the reason being is you're getting into an environment, in most cases, that you can't control how clean it is. It's also an environment that you may not have ever had never been to before, so you haven't been exposed to a lot of the pathogens in that environment. You're taking care of this piercing, and you're probably going to want to go swimming. It creates kind of a situation where it's a drag, and you have an increased likelihood of getting an infection. We all have those things that come up in an emergency, trip here or there. That should be okay. But keep in mind, if you can postpone either doing the piercing after you get back, or if you can do it far enough in advance of the vacation so that it's fully healed by then, that's your best option. Don't get it done and then go on vacation. Do you have this particular piercing? Do you have a labia minora piercing? How was that experience, and how's it doing, and how is the experience of living with the piercing, and et cetera? One of the things I like to do here is have comments that share the general public's experiences so everybody can learn a little bit from it. Till next time, here's hoping all your piercings heal with ease without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. Have a good day, everybody. Take care, and we'll see you in this next video.